your profile reads that you're a creative technologist and previously creative architect. So what does it stand for? Who are you?
Most of the creative technologists I know, and how I fell into that role is, at some point, agencies identified that there were people who worked a lot with technology, did programming or engineering, but were also operating as creatives, as, you know, designers and art directors, and were concepting ideas. And I think that this sort of creative technologist is a sort of this made up word to kind of put people like me who work between technology, who do programming, but also want to tell stories through programming and do creative coding, kind of a bucket that these people can fall into.
And in terms of this project, because it's a legendary Latvian band, Pērkons, and there are so many ways how you can tell stories. So why exactly virtual reality, and how did you choose to tell the story in virtual reality?
Well, the reason, so Fallon had wanted to build up their capabilities in virtual reality for some time. And so I was looking for a project with which to create like a proof of concept work for Fallon. And the Pērkons project seemed like a perfect opportunity to do that, because I think the only way to tell Pērkons' story is to totally immerse yourself into that world, into this sort of like Soviet reality, which was very oppressive, not just, you know, from people who got sent away and people who were repressed, but also like the architecture, the sort of social realist art, the way people behaved in the streetcar. Like if you weren't, you know, if you were whistling in the streetcar, someone would tell you, you know, "Ta nevar." And so I wanted to recreate that world. And on the other side, there was art. And like, I remember from being here in the 80s and 90s, I've never experienced such a creative world, creative community in a very uncreative space. This sort of oppressive social realism that existed back then. So this seemed like the perfect story to tell within that virtual reality space.
One side is technology and sort of what we want to achieve through technology, but the other side is content, right? Content has to have something that makes people tick, and like, how do you find the content or ideas that you know will work?
Well, this was a story I've wanted to tell for like ages. And it was only when I started playing with virtual reality and experimenting with it that I'm like, wow, this is the story I want to tell.
This is together.
It just happened together. You know, brands exist for a reason in the world. You know, if a brand didn't have a good reason for existing in the world, it just wouldn't exist. It just, no one would buy that product. But, you know, brands have to be an expression of what they love and what they love in the world. And instead of, you know, trying to express something they think they should be, just express what you love.
How has technology and virtual reality, how has it changed the viewer? What do people expect?
Well, I think so that's a great question. Because I think virtual reality, like, I think 95% of the virtual reality pieces that are out there kind of treat it as, you know, an extension of a brand experience. So, you know, I'm in so many meetings where someone, hey, let's do a virtual reality blank. And it's not appropriate to the medium, or it's trying to do something that the medium can't really do yet. And there's this other sort of view of virtual reality as kind of like a fun fair attraction. Let's go on a roller coaster ride on this. And I think that those kinds of experiences, while they're great and fun, they miss the emotional impact that you know, the power virtual reality has to make someone empathize with something they didn't know they could empathize with. For instance, you know, recreated, like a woman recently recreated Aleppo and in Syria to show the massive destruction that has taken place there. And when you're in that environment and seeing, even though it's a digital recreation of it, you get a sense of the scale of the destruction that you just can't get in any other medium.
And in terms of recognition, because, you know, we're all chasing awards, I guess, when we're at the agencies. How important is it, the recognition, the prizes that you get?
Well, you know... Is it important? I would argue it's not important. So when, you know, as a Publicis person, when the award show ban was put on, not a ban, I shouldn't say ban, but, you know, when they said, you know, it's sort of, you know, let's stop entering award shows, I wasn't as sad about it as most people, because I think that, so for this piece, what's, like for the Pērkons piece, our goal is to honor the band's legacy, and make their music better known through this virtual reality thing. So for me, the press we get, the social media strategy we execute is far more important to me than the award show recognition, because I think that through the awards, we're not going to get new fans in Brazil or, you know, Latin America or America through winning the award, but through, if we get a really good press piece in the Rolling Stone, then we will get more fans for the band. Where do I see the future? I love it that someone's asking me this question, because people usually don't ask me questions like that. I think advertising, as we know, it's going to be dead in a few years.
That's what I keep on hearing.
You know, and it's the only industry out there where people will pay money to avoid it. Like, if you don't like sausages, you won't pay money to avoid sausages. You just won't buy sausages, right? But people will actively pay money, $9.99 a month on Spotify, just not to hear advertising. They will pay, you know, they will install stuff on their computer so they don't have to see banner ads. They will pay Netflix money so they don't have to watch dumb ads on television. So I think that advertising, as we know, it's going to be dead, and where I think brands are going to have to start looking at making different kinds of experiences that people actually want to seek out and say, yes, I want that, as opposed to experiences that are just basically forced upon you. Like, you know, a television ad. Okay, I've got to sit here and watch 3 minutes of commercials and to watch the rest of my show. That's kind of like the price I pay is time. But now that there are so many ways to avoid it, brands are going to have to create content that people actively seek out. And it's going to be a range of stuff. It's going to be from very local, small budget things to very big budget things. So I think it's kind of exciting.
And in terms of customers, right, my take on it is that we're getting smarter and smarter by day, especially the younger generations, because they can go,
totally.
They've been brought up in information age, and they're curating their own, you know, Facebook feeds where they follow things. And how do you deal with smarter audiences? Because I'm always thinking about that customers are more rational nowadays than emotional, but what's your take on it? Rational versus emotional, where are we getting in terms of people that we're trying to talk to?
Even if we're not talking about advertising, I mean, when you go from a generation, like, look at the Cambridge Analytica scandal. So people my age went, what? That guy in the t-shirt who was talking to us wasn't telling the truth? They're taking our data and using it for evil means? like I'm like surprised and shocked by that, and everyone in my generation is shocked by that. Whereas, you know, the 22-year-olds and 23-year-olds at our office, which is predominantly our office, I'm like the old man at the office. They're like, yeah, of course, I was expecting that. And they're like, it's actually not as bad as we thought. So it's like a naivety versus smarts. And I think,
cynical maybe at some point.
and no, I don't even think it's cynicism. I think that they're like, no, I know that that's how my data is being used, and that's the price I'm willing to pay. I think that, so for brands, what's going to be interesting is that I think an even younger generation that's still in high school is going to start saying, well, if you want my data, right? So right now what Facebook basically says, you give me this, you give me your data, and you will have this service we call Facebook and Instagram and whatever. The even younger generation is going to start saying, no, you have to pay me for my data. If I am a channel, if I'm a vessel for your thing, I'm not going to use that and that's what's going to dramatically alter the advertising landscape and these players like Facebook.
So
I think it's going
a new currency and time.
It's totally. And you've already seen, there have been a few examples of that where people have said, no, if you're going to use my data, that's currency, and pay for it. And then how brands kind of fit in with that is anyone's guess, I guess.